New Orleans' troubled drainage system has lost a major source of power to run its pumps, and the head of the Sewerage and Water Board called it devastating at a board meeting today. Sewerage and Water Board Executive Director Ghassan Korban said an explosion in December damaged Turbine 5 so badly the agency would need to buy a new turbine to replace the 20 megawatts of electricity Turbine 5 produced. That's not good going into hurricane season. Think about it. The loss of Turbine 5 already caused problems last Friday when lightning took out the power supply to 3 major drainage pumps in Broadmoor. The streets near the pumping station filled with water in the early morning hours and damaged several cars there.
A turbine that could replace T5 that could be delivered within probably 6 months to 9 months is about $20 million. You know, we walked into this year with some hope that the fair share dollars might allow us to do some projects and some initiatives. Well, we all know that that's not going to happen.
Our down the drain investigation in 2017 found the Sewerage and Water Board under former Mayor Mitch Landrieu passed up the chance to buy a brand new modern turbine for $16 million. Instead, it spent twice as much fixing a 100-year-old steam turbine.